trace the history of global order back and forth, crisis, based on the topic of the discussion anyway, crisis is actually an important opportunity for strong nations. In some cases, it's even orchestrated to make sure that order has changed from the bad ones to the good ones, or the more conformable ones to the recent norm. Of course, if you check the history of even first industrial revolution, you will see that they have a plague which killed so many of the farmers, and in turn, the British is trying to look for how can we create a system that will allow a machine to run these operations where otherwise I will need more slave labor. And there we have a first industrial revolution, and even the crisis of course, First World War between 1914, 1918, and of course the Spanish flu, which culminated into rise of Germany, and then condemned by 1945 after the Second World War, and then we create a global order from 1945 till today that have given unprecedented amount of growth to the entire global economy, such that have never been seen for the past 75 years now. So strong people or strong nation take crisis as an opportunity to reshape the system to be able to be more conformable to the modern demand. If you look at Nigeria today as a case study, you will see, as many of the speakers have pointed out, that the center is so much concentrated. Almost everything is coming from the center. In fact, from the power equation law, you will see that Nigeria is having almost 85% of the power concentrated at the center. And the center, one of the biggest problems it has is that it's heavily subsidizing. Everything is just subsidized from the center. Like the civil service is overbloated. This is a country that have less than $30 billion a budget per annum, with about 4 million civil servants. Almost 70% of the money goes to salaries and emolument. So you wonder, what money do we have to even channel on the part of development? The most consuming commodity of which we import is oil. And we export crude oil and then export it in form of fuel to sell. We subsidize that. We struggle to get dollars to be able to power investment. We subsidize that because we peg the dollar at a certain exchange rate value as a measure of Naira. And of course, we have series of security problems that the center cannot be able to hold alone. The center needs problems we are facing. So these are serious challenges that needed to be addressed deeply. And of course, we have never had an opportunity to do so in the history of this country since Civil War than now. But unfortunately, you know the way the system works in Nigeria. But I want to commend two strategic efforts done by the government in this. I heard the Minister of Finance talking about the medium-term expenditure framework, where she rightly said that the exchange rate that was used to measure the budget going forward is 360 Naira, clearly trying to show that we are liberalizing the dollar, away from the normal issues that it has. And at the same time, also, some of the Abacha loot that were patriated, the welfareists were saying that the government should distribute to the people in terms of palliatives. But the government decided to say they are going to channel it to actually infrastructure investment where the dollar is much needed to be able to empower. So when you look at all those things, you will see that we have a very serious opportunity to change. And at the same time, the entire country is at home, sitting, and the parliament are in a panic mode. So when there is a genuine desire to make efficient change into the system, there has never been a better time than now. To the best of my knowledge, of course, the system, as rightly said by the elder statesman, we have a huge military hangover over a long period of time. And the system we inherited was designed completely by the military. And everything that is being run is actually done in a military-style democratic system. So therefore, when we continue to have this kind of setting, it will be a very big problem. And at the same time, when we continue to hammer on this very big or hyperbolic political term called restructuring, we are not going to go anywhere, because somehow there is deep level of mistrust about the word restructuring. And that is why you see the elder statesman is asking questions like, can we have specific details about how this restructuring can be done. So if we continue to debate between do restructuring and don't do restructuring, we may not move forward. The best solution here is to begin to act quickly by inject the necessary mechanism within the country's governance system to transform it back to productivity, as opposed to the consumption-driven welfare state that we have today. Like, I can give you, for example now, I mentioned to you that the civil service is very high at the center. Everything is consumed from the center. The governors come to Abuja to collect from the center. Local government come to Abuja to collect from the center. The president is waiting for oil to be able to power its own budget. So when we continue this way, there is a very serious problem. But we have a short hangover that we can adapt that can easily be able to scale through the constitutional demand or the parliamentary demand and then get us back to work and also get the country back to productivity. For instance, there is no reason why like federal government will focus on something that has to do with many things regarding like implementation of healthcare services or implementation of educational services or even security. So instead of us to say we are going a whole big basket of restructuring as a component, why don't we just pick it into pieces and start maybe by decentralizing security, which is one of the biggest problems we have in the country. Why do we have policing at the center? Why can't we have a state policing system? Why don't we divide the police into two, where we have the federal police and the state police like we have in so many countries, especially United States? Why don't we put the state police under criminal justice system and allow them to run under judiciary so that you can be able to track down and monitor how they carry out their responsibility in state, and then they will be answerable to the federal judicial institutions. So if you do that quickly, this is something that can get passed by the law, and this is something that the president has approved, that we can be able to have some level of security at the center, which is that some level of security at the local state level. So these are the things that we need to quickly be able to push and then be able to harness and transform the country back to more protected zones, as opposed to the way it is now. Almost every state have a security challenge. And at the same time, you can be able to push healthcare and education down to local government level, because that is where it is needed. The center can focus on regulation, monitoring, evaluation, and then release of necessary guidelines for proper implementation. But the center cannot implement. The center as it is today is very difficult for it to be able to secure the entire country. The center is very difficult for the center to administer an efficient, non-biased agricultural programs without having a partnership with the states and the local government, and then get these resources distributed through states and the local government in the most efficient manner. So if we continue this way in a more graduated, hybridized way, we will get the restructuring done in no time than to even be hammering and be talking into the level where it's creating polarization and of course, and it's been politicized. It's a fantastic proposal to restructure this country. I can tell you, I am in the north. I am currently sitting in Adamawa State, my home state, and I can tell you that this country cannot really continue to work the way it is today. Now, but people need to understand deeply how these things can be done. While this water has been corrupted or maybe somehow politicized, what can we do quickly to get these things done? Now that we are in a crisis mode, now that as a snap of the finger, the president can have both the two parliamentary heads in his desk and then get something done. Now that Nigerians can be able to get so many things that we needed to be done to be able to address most of our seeming challenges. So we have challenges in the country. We have a crisis situation that's supposed to flatten our economy completely so that we can kickstart it back to productivity. But unfortunately, there are so many directions that we've taken so far. Of course, with the heavy hangover that I said earlier on the military side, and also the heavily politicized, patronizing environment of our Nigerian political settings, it's very difficult for us to get these things done. As rightly said by the elder statesman, he also mentioned that you have people contesting for political offices simply because they want to go and make money. Sincerely, that is what is happening in Nigeria. What is happening in the country is about sharing the pie. Who the biggest contributor during your political journey, the bigger the pie he gets when he gets it. The whole struggle is around who controls NMP and who controls CBN, so that you can have as much dollars and you can have as much oil exported. So those guys are comfortable with that level. and what they do. And it's very, very difficult for us to continue to make them see the need for change in the system if we did not participate deeply into the system. The problem we have, particularly with the younger generation, as opposed to the generation of the respective elder statesman, is that we refuse to take political participation as an active duty as citizens that are supposed to change the status quo. We always take a backseat and either expect them to do it for us, or we point fingers at them that they are not doing the right thing. Meanwhile, we don't actually participate. I can give you a clear example. I participated in the last election. I came out and contested for the presidency under APC, during the 2019 election. I was the only contender with President Muhammadu Buhari as an aspirant, but unfortunately, even the youths within the party are against their own fellow new face. Now, if you go back throughout the country, I almost become a lone ranger, despite the fact that I am clamoring for a complete unbundling the system and transforming it back to productivity. But the youths seems to develop some level of pessimism with the system, while some devalue themselves and felt like they are too inferior to occupy the political offices. And this has created a huge blocker that we find ourselves in this situation today. So as much as we want to blame the system, as much as we want to blame the people governing us, and as much as we want to also be pointing at the Constitution as the ultimate alpha and omega for fixing Nigeria, we will not abscond ourselves from blame, because that is actually where the biggest problem is coming from. The right people are not in the system. You do not expect to have any change within the system, except if you are comfortable protesting and talking all the time. So what I would want to say here in the conference is, I think it is important for fine people that I see here, very, very intelligent people, very well informed, widely traveled, exposed, to start looking at the possibility of active participation in governing this country. Not just by talking or insisting that it should be done, but by actively participating in the political process and political development in Nigeria, with the view of trying to influence its own outcome. Because that's actually where we have the problem. This country is not working for the North. Not just anywhere, not just the South or the East. It's not even working for the North. Just very few people benefit from the system. Very, very few people. I traveled to Mubi. I have a bakery chain, so I set up a branch in Mubi, one local government here in Adamawa State, 200 kilometers away from the state capital. I traveled on a very bad road, and that's the commercial center of Adamawa State. And that is actually even neighboring Cameroon, a border town. But you need to see the road to pass to that place. So dilapidated and so completely abandoned by the federal government, and it's a federal government road. And when you talk to the governor, because I spoke with the governor told me that that is a federal road. We do not have jurisdiction over federal road. So you can imagine this kind of job. Now, this is an infrastructure that's supposed to enable productivity of the local state, but you are waiting for one minister of infrastructure sitting somewhere who does not even understand what is happening here to fix it for you. So that cannot work. So it's not about like nobody wants or don't want the restructuring. No, it's about the need for us to come into the system and try to make people see the reason why these things should be implemented. You have vast amount of agricultural land that is just thrown out there. You see one big man having like maybe 200 acres of those land and sitting empty. Nobody dares go inside to farm in those places. And then the same people in the locality travel to some other places to be able to feed themselves when they can be able to use this land. So we have so much problem in the system that if we continue to favor the center, like the power at the center, as the main way to solve this problem, we will continue to satisfy the ego of our retired military officers to continue to rule us, while we mortgage the future of ourselves, our children, and great-grandchildren. And this is actually where the problem is. The problem we have in Nigeria is not just systematic issue, it's also a generational participation issue. Most of the people that are leading this country are supposed not to be there at all, partly due to the extinction of their idea in the way statecraft model is being run, and partly because the main intention of them participating in the system is what they can extract as a value for their own selves, their families, and their pockets. So if we continue, if you truly want a genuine, progressive, developed, a model Nigeria that is going to be a kind of a country that will serve as a platform for the evaluation, emancipation, and the greater rise for the entire Black race on earth. We that understand the meaning and the values of these things need to be at the center of taking decisions for the benefit of everyone. This is a federation state. You do not expect power to come from one person taking final decision on 200 million people in one shabbily packaged constitution, and then we now say that we have a country. To the best of my knowledge, I think if we continue that way, it's not going to work. And as I can tell you, I told you this, it's not working for everybody. It's not working for the North. The North is greatly impoverished. And what impoverished the North is partly because of this problem, not really because of maybe the current structure is favoring the North. The current structure, in fact, don't favor the North. Even I think we are most at the disadvantage from the northern side of this country than the southwest and the southeastern part of this country currently. You may not have political participation, but I'm telling you, when it comes to distribution of resources and allocation of right policy that will enable people to be able to function at their full capacity or to realize their full potential, we are the greatest disadvantage here. So restructuring is actually a very good model, but if we continue to talk it, because as I'm talking to you, the word is heavily politicized, and if we continue to be waiting for restructuring to get Nigeria back to productivity, to get Nigeria where we want it to be, we will just be wasting time. The best thing we need to do is to look into where we are and how can we strategically, silently, and implementing these things stage by stage way, whereby we decentralize security first. Well, after decentralizing security, then we now begin to, we hold the center, the fiscal policy, the dollar Naira policy, the crude oil policy, and all the undersurface items like the gold, the silver, the diamond, and all those kind of things are now channeled towards capacity development of the brain of Nigerians, so that we can have good human capital that can be able to start thinking deeper and creating industries out of these resources that we have. Then we will always be having problems. While at the center, at the state level, we can begin to have some level of resource control. Not completely at the same time. You have to graduate the process. You start by the smallest amount of resources in a graduated way to the highest amount of resources. That is exactly how we do. While we grow by decentralizing the system from one side, we also transform the country from consumption and unproductive system to production and a more value-driven system. So that's exactly what I believe we need to look at in this country. That is one last point I want to mention again, which is a repetition, is that we in this conference have to begin to look at active ways of participating actively into the political activities with the view of trying to influence its own outcome to the benefit of Nigerians. As the elder statement said, we have nowhere to go. Moving back to 1963 constitution might be a fantastic idea, but to me it's a reverse. I think now the world has moved into 21st century, and if you look at what we are having, we used to have globalization 1945 to 2015. Now we have glocalization. So, and coronavirus have pushed people to create their own boundaries, and most states are now becoming nationalistic. And the supply chain model of what connects different nodes in from one country to the other is actually the economic channel, not the political channel. Today in the world, we don't have one country that is pushing for a certain political ideology of other countries. You know what President Trump is doing. America has been the leading nation pushing for political and economic reform. Now their basic care is economic reform, to me, which is fantastic. It has given off some level of political liberalization to define the system that works for Nigeria with little or no foreign interference at all. And if there is any interest that is governing the process of delaying us from implementing the right policy that is going to bring us back to productivity, then coronavirus have presented us with this opportunity. Because most state actors today are focusing on their own countries. Nobody cares about global action no more, except on tackling coronavirus. When it comes to policy implementation, the entire world is in emergency mode. Each country should do what it thinks is best to be able to stay afloat and continue to function and prosper with the prevailing crisis. So what we need to do is to take advantage of this window of opportunity where we have less political interference, less global interference, and at the same time, less dollar material consumption, because that's where we have the problem. Most of the dollar we get in this country when we sell all the items that require dollar, we ended up using that same resources to be able to import some luxury items in this country, as opposed to channeling them to build infrastructure. So we don't have that. So what we need to do is that we can define a new policy around investing dollar. Central bank, I really wish Professor Mogalu is here. Central bank will have to come in and serve as an investment banking system for powering the infrastructure of Nigeria, as opposed to what it is today, as just, to me, not more than a subsidy giving an institution. Central bank give farmers certain amount of money. Central bank has given this certain amount of money. Money is just going into the economy, and in most cases, those monies are going into the consumption, not the production side of the economy. Or even if they are channeled or they are meant to go through the production part of the economy, they ended up getting to the consumption side, whereby the money goes in and it disappears. So we need to make sure that we have a policy of all the dollars that come into the country. Since we need electricity, we need rail network, we need good road network, we need good bridges, which is infrastructure. Since we need all those things to be available for us to be able to have a functioning, connected economy in the country, we will have to make a deliberate policy that will ensure that all the dollars coming into these countries are channeled towards building this necessary infrastructure. Meanwhile, for the local economy to thrive, now that we don't have direct connection with the external economies due to the global pandemic, we can use Naira. We thank God that our currency is Naira, not like Francophone countries. So we can still use Naira. We can adapt principles such as quantitative easing to be able to kickstart the local economy and enable consumption production within the economy using Naira. So Naira can help us to kickstart the production side of the economy, since people now have no option than to patronize Naira. And from that Naira, people can now begin to buy using Naira, sell using Naira, produce using Naira, while we have less global interference from the international system. That is an opportunity that I have seen that is presented by coronavirus, but unfortunately, we are so, like, sometimes we are so overtaken by the negative side of the negative publicity than otherwise the positive side of it. And of course, I'm sure most of us know that one of the philosophical inclination to change is actually follow three clear actions. One, if you want to change a society, you have to inject fear. You know, if fear doesn't work, you have to inject greed. Then you have to use curiosity. It is believed that people work faster when they are afraid. They adopt to new things faster when they are afraid. Not that everybody is asked to put face masks and stay at home and wash your hands and just pray to God. It means that this man or this woman that are staying at home washing their hands and putting face masks, if you tell them that, guys, this is the right way, we have no option to get out of this situation than this way, everyone will fall in line. And if there's a genuine, committed, and deliberate leadership to fix things up, then we have opportunity to really do that now that people are actually waiting and looking forward to a better way forward for the country. Thank you very much. Let me not take much time. I'm seeing that this is about 8:55. Let me wait for questions.
So thank you very much, Gaba, for that wonderful presentation. And I remain Maz okay here. So in summary, obviously what you've said is, I'll put them in three planks. One is the unbundling of the exclusive list. Second is active participation. And lastly, that, the states will be given the opportunity to deal on those things that they ought to do. My question, before I allow others to do this, to ask their question, is very simple. I am a proponent of unbundling the exclusive list, moving some items into the concurrent list in order to ease the federal government or to ease the top. Now, there is a challenge, in as much as I believe that is the right thing to do, but somehow within at the back of my mind, something bothers me a lot. And that is, the states, as we have it today, appear incapable to manage the ones they have. Now, talk less of moving further. When you talk about the road, the movie, I mean, I've lived in Jimeta, I've lived in Yola, so it's part of my area. I understand this road you talk about. The question is, even within Adamawa itself, there are local roads yet undone. And the governor would always tell you, oh, this road, the reason why the road is like this is because it's a federal road. There are roads he should do. He hasn't done it. These are roads that can ease, in the farming communities. They can use those roads to bring food out, yet they haven't done it. Now, the question there to you is it that we know the right things to do and not doing it, or that we are just blaming the structure to be part of the reason why we are not getting it right?
Thank you very much for this question, but if I may answer you here, I want to believe that the system is heavily politicized. Every structure in Nigeria, every single decision is taken with political interest, not economic interest. And that political interest is for the highest bidder, not the people at the base of the pyramid. Now, if you give enough resources, like in terms of policy making and innovative thinking around governor's office, it will automatically, of course, this is an evolutionary process. It starts from point A to point B before you get the right thing done. The current political leaders might not do the right thing, but the subsequent ones, people will have reason to question the competency of their state executive. And when they begin to do that, they will begin to also listen to innovative ideas presented by the next contenders. And along the line, they may tilt towards those ones that are giving them more unique solution to their immediate problem that is connected to their immediate environment than to wait for one political godfather in Abuja who endorses certain candidate. Because the problem we have now is certain people will just sit down in certain office and then pick one person and say they issue him a ticket. So if you are contesting, no matter how much amount of money you say you want to use to contest, provided that godfather did not endorse you, you can't do nothing. And unfortunately, this godfather is waiting for returns. So you can't do what he did not authorize you to do so because you are trying to outshine certain principle for which he is to remain relevant as a godfather. Some of these governors, not that they don't really want to fix those roads, they actually do want to. But the problem is that it is outside the jurisdiction for which they have agreed with the godfathers endorsing them. And if they mistakenly bypass these godfathers to go and do this implementation, they will face problems, with their godfathers. And the godfathers may push them out of the party, and they may not get another platform that can be able to give them opportunity to do the right thing. So if we disincentivize that office by giving it a lot of opportunity to think and innovate and create solutions, and that it will be held accountable completely for lack of creating these solutions, then we're giving opportunity for people with the solution to come into play. That's actually what I think. So, but current structure does not allow that incentive or that disincentivization of going to Abuja to collect money. The incentive created is just for you to go to Abuja and collect money, but there is no incentive for you to be innovative to stay relevant on that seat. All you need to do is to be a loyal boy and loyal man who listens to orders, who carry instructions, who do as he's told, and then you are there as a governor. And that is why we are having this complete decentralized or the complete confusion at the local level of governance. So if we now put a lot of responsibility on those states using policy from the center and then make them accountable for delivering these public goods, and then ask the state, the people within the same locality to question their incapability to deliver efficiently, then those same people will begin to look for real people that can deliver. And that's why I think doing that is going to help.
Thank you very much.